So I imagine we have to wait a few moments just for everyone to be able to
Yep.
get in and acclimated.
It's feeding in.
I see Heather raised her hand. Hi, Heather. Did you have a question?
Oh, hi. Yeah. I logged on my phone, but
Yep.
I was trying to log on my computer and I couldn't get in for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know why. Can I try again and you can just,
Yes, we're using the webinar form, so I don't know if that's causing a little bit of a wrinkle, but I do see you and hear you.
okay, let me see if I can, I'll try it again.
Okay, we'll give you a couple minutes, sure.
It says it's just saying that I'm in Rebecca's personal meeting room, but it won't let me in somehow.
We just opened it.
Okay. Are you clicking on the link from this this meeting's agenda?
Yes. Is that the problem?
I think now that you've opened it, it'll look different.
No.
Try it again.
Recording.
There it is. Let me leave this.
Oh, I'm assuming she's good. I see her back in there. Okay, well, I don't see too many more people funneling in at the moment. So why don't we get started with the official introduction and we can start to get going here. So I will begin with our remote meeting introduction. We'll get going. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's June 16th revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of the public body, this meeting of the Great Barrington Board of Health will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. See instructions at the top of the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. With that being said, I'll officially call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Peter?
Aye.
Ruby?
Here.
And I'm here as well. The meeting is officially called to order. Our first item of business is approving minutes from November 4th.
I make a motion we approve the minutes from November 4th.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. I believe we still have to take roll call votes, Rebecca, for everything. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, it used to say it on the agenda. I was under the impression we still had to do that. Peter?
Aye.
Ruby?
Here.
And I vote aye as well. I see Nan's hand is up. Let me just see her for one quick second. Hi, Nan, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm recording this meeting, if that's all right.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay. So next item on our agenda is Health Department updates. What do we have, Rebecca?
Okay. So we are in the throes of our permit renewal process for annual permits. We talked about this the last time, our last meeting, but we set a deadline for annual permit renewals to be submitted to the health department for December 17th. And I did not remember in time to put it on our agenda, but we had talked about imposing late fees on any late or incomplete applications after the 17th. So I have some information on what surrounding towns charge for late fees, but if you want to vote on adding this to our fee schedule or amending our fee schedule, we'll have to hold another meeting since it's not formally on the agenda, but I can just give you an update on what towns charge what. So let's see. Okay, so I checked in with Dalton because they have a similar amount of permits that they issue annually as Great Barrington does, but they had been on kind of an irregular permit renewal schedule. They weren't issuing permits every year. But the health agent there said that they were going to look into charging late fees next year, and they'll probably impose a $25 late fee per week at that point. But right now they're not charging any late fees. So that's Dalton. Pittsfield charges $25, just a one-time late fee, no matter how late the application is. It's just a flat rate of $25 tacked on. Tri-Town Health Department takes the cake with the highest late fees. So they've organized it in a schedule with how many days late the application is. So if the application is between 1 and 15 days late, they charge $100. 16 and 30 days late, they charge $150. Between 31 and 45 days late, they charge $200. And for any application over 46 days late, it's an additional $250. And then one more town that we took a survey from is Williamstown. Again, they're very similar to Great Barrington in terms of their business district and what they have for restaurants, lodging establishments, septage haulers, etc. And so they charge an additional 50% of the application, of the total application fee as their late fee, no matter how late it is. So, you know, right now there aren't any late fees on our fee schedule. So
I thought we did have a late fee. I'm sorry, I thought we were under the impression that we had some sort of late fee for applications.
we've talked about it so when we developed our temporary food permitting policy, we wrote in that late fees would be charged for temporary food permits if they were beyond the deadline of 2 weeks prior to the event. So in that scenario, you gave the health department leeway to charge and impose late fees, but just for our standard annual permits.
I remember that conversation now. In my mind, I had it lumped in with all permits, but I do remember talking about that. Yeah.
So
Okay.
just looking for some guidance and thoughts. Again, we can't vote on this tonight, but if you are all in favor or in any way in favor of pursuing this, just let me know and we can tack it on as another agenda item for January, or we can have a special meeting between now and January when our permits will be officially late. So like I said, we set a deadline for December 17th. That leaves us 2 weeks prior to the end of the year when all annual permits expire. They expire on December 31st. So if anyone is operating without a valid permit beyond that day, then we have the right to charge fines.
Well, I think we should have it on the agenda for next meeting, and that way we can see what we're dealing with in terms of volume of late fees. Historically, do we have a lot? Is it just a few that trickle in? Is it the same number that seem to come in, or is it random each year?
I've never tracked it, so I can't say specifically. It's typically the same applicants every year that we're really encouraging to get all of their documents in on time or submit an application in a timely fashion. But Ned, what would you say? It's fair to say that maybe 20 to 30 of our food establishment applications are processed late or incomplete. Ned's only been doing this for 1 year, but
Yeah,
that's,
I think so. I think 20% is fair to say, but a positive sign is a lot of the late people last year are early this year. So to avoid that late fee charge. And I think it's looking good so far. I've been sending out more reminders this year and more emails, more notes, things like that. So I'm hoping we won't have a ton of them. I mean, we'll see though. Time will tell.
Okay,
so it's typically our food establishment applicants that we see the majority of incomplete applications from. And I think that really just speaks to how many more food establishment applications we process than any other. So for lodging, we only have 12. For solid waste haulers, garbage, we have 10 or 11 applicants. Tobacco retailers, we have, I think, 8. So most of our incomplete applications are from food establishments.
okay. Well, let's put it on the agenda next month, and we get the similar volume, then maybe I think it might be appropriate to talk about starting with some small fee that we introduce. And if that can help you guys out and get close to full compliance, then I think that would be the ideal thing. I don't know as if we need to jump right in as far as Tri-Town is. That sounds like a high bar, but I think we should revisit it and talk about it in more depth next month.
Okay. That was the only thing I wanted to cover under health department updates.
Okay. So we'll move on to the Great Barrington Housing Authority extension request. And this pertains to correction orders we have for units 12 and 27.
Okay. I'm just going to pull them up here so I can read from them as I talk to you. So we issued our correction order for unit 12 Bernard Gibbons Drive a while ago. We issued it September 3rd. So they're well beyond the deadline for this particular correction order. However, they have fully corrected all but one of their violations pertaining to mold or mildew on the linoleum kitchen floor. So we cited the presence of mold, but also the mold as indicative of a chronic moisture issue. And so that does take a lot of time to remedy, is identifying what's causing the source of moisture and fully eradicating it. And that is the one outstanding violation for that correction order. And then we issued a correction order for 27 Bernard Gibbons Drive, which is directly across the way from 12. We inspected this unit on October 26th, and we issued the correction order for November 8th. And the primary reason for our inspection was, again, the occupant had complaints regarding mold. And we were just there for a reinspection this week. I think it was Tuesday the 7th. I went back and I met with maintenance and then the property manager and then someone from their state office. And at that point, during our inspection, none of our violations had been, or citations had been corrected. So at this point, I believe they're beyond the 30-day deadline for this correction order too, but only by a day or two. But it hasn't really been started, or progress hasn't really been made on those violations. So I got one email from the property manager for Unit 27's correction order. It was a pretty informal email, just stating that maybe 2 weeks would be sufficient to complete work. I don't think that's really an adequate time. But for Unit 12, I have not received a formal request in writing for an extension order or extension request. So when I put this on the agenda because when we met all together on Tuesday afternoon, they said that they would like to apply for extensions on these 2 correction orders, and we were really down to the wire with having to put things on our agenda. So I said I would just put it on and please get me a letter as soon as possible. I thought we were all on the same page, but like I said, I haven't gotten anything in writing from them, but that could just be extenuating circumstances. So
I know things move slow over there, but they do move. Are we seeing movement, albeit slow movement? Or, I mean, certainly with if I'm understanding correctly, with number 12, there's only one item. Are they working at resolving that? And with 27, is I know they usually have a lengthy process of getting supervisors in and getting the higher ups involved. And I know that's been a little frustrating to us in the past, but we have seen results from them. So I don't doubt that they are working towards it as long as we're seeing that they are.
yes, I was hoping for a letter so I wouldn't have to speak on behalf of them on any of these issues, but I know there was a work order put in for Unit 12 as soon as they received our correction order. And this remaining violation of addressing the chronic moisture and replacing the floor, I think has to go through more red tape and bureaucracy in the housing authority than maybe some of the other violations that are easier to fix. So there is some movement there. And then there were some health risks with the other unit and getting access to the apartment to make necessary repairs. So I think that delayed things as well. So I am seeing movement, albeit slow, but that's all I can really say.
Do you have a suggestion of what you'd like to see happen? I mean, it sounds like we should grant an extension just from our past experience there, knowing that they're, like I mentioned before, their process is slow. But they have always come through in the end to get things done. Or I guess, what do you have a course of action you'd like to see or have us consider?
I mean, the goal is always to get violations corrected as soon as possible. So normally when we see a correction order that is left outstanding, we take matters up the judicial hierarchy and go to housing court. But I think in those scenarios, we really see negligent property owners or property management services. And I can't really say that for Great Barrington Housing Authority in terms of these 2 correction orders. I think there's just been extenuating circumstances. I think given our previous relationship with them, we should kind of give them a pass without getting the administrative pieces together in time to get us a formal extension in writing and just say, okay, here's your one chance to not really follow the procedures with the Board of Health, and, you know, we'll give you an extension just so they can keep moving forward. But that decision is up to you.
Well, I would like to have communication from them. I mean, we talked about this just recently and saying, you know, even if knowing that it was very, you know, things happened developed at the last minute. I mean, it would have been more simple courtesy and protocol for them to at least send an email. So I'd like to have it be communicated to them that they need to be in communication with us. We're very understanding board, especially like we mentioned with our past and ongoing relationship, but they at least need to go through the motions of getting us some sort of written request. A formal letter is always best. So I'm wondering if we can, you know, grant them a conditional 30-day extension upon receipt of a formal request within 1 week of today. And if we don't get that, then maybe we need to revisit that at a special meeting. But I would like to keep the focus on this and not have it drag out any longer than it needs to be, because I know that's easy to do, especially this time of year. But like I said, we're very understanding that of their process over there. How do you guys feel about that, Peter and Ruby?
Similar.
I don't really understand how they get people to fix these issues. Do they have their own staff of, or do they contract out each time?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, they have an in-house maintenance team that can do minor repairs. But when we make recommendations or site violations that require a larger, maybe systemic issue, need indoor air quality assessments done, then I've seen them contract out. When we were there for our follow-up inspection for 27 Bernard Gibbons, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he was someone from their state office that they needed permission from to get started on this work.
So, you know, taking into consideration that it's just Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and it sounds like they need more extensive work to be done. I agree with getting a formal letter stating what their intentions are as the condition for extending 30 days.
Okay.
Okay, good. One point of order, Rebecca, do we need to hear public? I know there's this new policy that we're employing where we need to ask for comment on any item we vote on.
That's a good point. We're in a little bit of a different setup with this webinar, but yes.
Okay.
Yes, let's.
All right, well, I'll put that out. If anyone wants to speak to this particular issue, now is the opportunity to raise your hand and we will hear from you. If not, and seeing no hands, I'll look for a motion to grant, to provisionally grant an extension based on getting a formal letter from them within the next 5 business days.
Make a motion that we approve the extension conditional on receiving a letter from them.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. We'll take a quick roll call. Peter?
Aye.
Ruby?
Aye.
I vote affirmatively as well. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is housing public hearing regarding 52 River Street. And our first item is looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
Is there any question, just from seeing some of the emails and information going back and forth about whether we were going to delay this.
Well, I think we can have this discussion. I think we can go ahead and open our public hearing and have this discussion there.
Okay. I make a motion that we open the discussion.
My second,
I am in favor too. Roll call will be Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. We did receive some communication from both the tenant and legal counsel. My intention tonight, seeing as we've received an extensive appeal on this matter, was that because of how extensive it is, I mean, it's basically the whole thing is being appealed. In my mind, the most expeditious thing to do was to get out there and do a re-inspection, certainly with Ned and Rebecca and one of us on the board. I mean, I'm happy to do that. But I think seeing as the whole thing is being contested, that's really the only thing to do is to go through. And that's why I felt that we could go ahead and open this public hearing, knowing that that's my recommendation, that's the course that we pursue. Of course, I want to hear from Ms. McAllister, who's here tonight, but that was my intention to try to, there's no sense going down through a correction order that's being completely contested. And it may seem to be much more productive if we went out there and basically did a re-inspection, which is probably the most fruitful thing to do. But that's my opinion, that's my recommendation to our board. Rebecca, did you have anything to add to that?
I had a few things that I thought might be helpful. So I guess like normal when we talk about a correction order or have a public hearing related to a correction order, I give a timeline of our involvement. Would that be helpful?
Yes, please do. I just wanted to say that at the outset. In response to Peter's question.
I have a few bullet points beyond that, but I'll start with the timeline. So we received a complaint from the occupants of 54 River Street on November 8th through email and a phone call. So then we scheduled a follow-up inspection of the 2 units of concern on November 10th, so 2 days later at 10 a.m. So with the invitation of the occupants, we were permitted to inspect the areas that they have permission of. So that's their own units, that's shared spaces like the yard, the deck, and I believe they have access to the basement too, since they had their items stored there. And so subsequently we issued correction orders for unit 1 and unit 2 of 54 River Street to the property owner, Ms. McAllister. And so anyone that receives an order or a citation from the health department has the right and the opportunity to petition to the Board of Health for a public hearing. That's what we're doing tonight. So we received Ms. McAllister's appeal for our correction order that was issued on November 24th. On Tuesday, December 7th, which was just in time for us to add this public hearing to our agenda that met the 42-hour deadline. But this was not adequate time for the occupant whom the correction order and violations impact to attend herself or to schedule legal representation to be here. So I would just caution against any decisions made that could be detrimental to the occupant. And also, while we're on that subject, so we inspected 2 units, issued 2 correction orders, but one of the 2 units has since been vacated. And typically our correction orders only follow while there is occupancy. And so our correction orders still remain, they still remain. If the property owner has to correct all violations, but the 30-day timeline can be relaxed a little bit until they reoccupy the unit. So part of what I would like to do today is just put language on putting a hold on unit 1's correction order until that unit, if and when that unit is ever reoccupied. Unit 2 is still occupied. And they will be following a normal 30-day timeline. Okay.
Okay,
And so one other thing that I wanted to clarify, which I think will be helpful, I'll be really quick, is that the Mass Housing Code, Chapter 2 Sanitary Code, protects anyone who currently resides in a residential building. And the title of this sanitary code is called Minimum Standards of Human Habitation. So therefore, as agents and the Board of Health, we have to ensure the protection and safety of any occupant in any dwelling. So regardless of there being a tenancy agreement, delinquency on rental payments, or lawful occupancy. And, this could really go as far as protecting squatters. I don't think that's what's happening in terms of this issue, but I just wanted to clarify that the housing code protects any occupant in any dwelling, no matter of a legal agreement or not.
right.
So-
Yeah, yes, I understand there's a ongoing dispute between the tenant and the landlord. Okay, that's helpful to have that clarification. Anything else to add before we hear from Ms. McAllister?
That's all from me.
Okay, I think we will hear from Ms. McAllister now. And is it promote to panelists? Is that the function we want to use? Oh, you're muted. somehow.
Sorry. If
Okay.
you want to see someone's video, if you want to, have them on this screen, then yes, you promote them as a panelist. If you just want to hear what they have to say, then
Okay,
I'm just wondering if I think my suggestion would be that we go to the panelists option. And the other thing is, I think that because this is going to be an ongoing thing and the other person isn't here to represent themselves, that we limit the time, whether it's 3 to 5 minutes for this part of it, if anybody else is interested in that.
yes, I let me just promote, get Ms. McAllister on here. Let's see if that comes through. Promote to panelist. There we go. I see your screen. I see you. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi.
Hi. Just in light of what Peter said, I want to let you know that I have read through your entire appeal that was sent to the town manager and was forwarded to me. If you want to, of course, we want to hear from you. But like Peter said, if we can get, I know we've all seen that. I've read the whole thing. I'm sure the other board members have seen that too.
Mhm.
If we can, in light of what I said earlier about my intention is to get over there and do a reinspection, since you basically have contested the whole thing.
I
But
would appreciate that.
yes, if we could, we of course want to hear from you.
Okay. Well, let me say at the outset, this inspection report completely blindsided me. I received no copy of it. It was held, as Ms. Jursic said, on November 10th, I gather, the inspection. And then on November 29th, these two tenants have been served a summary process there. I took possession and ownership of this property on September 2nd to own it as a single family home. These tenants were served their proper legal notice of termination of their month-to-month tenancies. They did not have leases. They had month-to-month tenancies. They decided to seek legal counsel and to remain in the property. They were then served their summary process orders. So this is an attempt. They have played what I call a cat and mouse game, to be honest. Since I took possession and ownership, I have attempted, they gave me, instead of a statement of condition as to their apartments upon their entry into their apartments some time ago, they sent a 6-page letter of their conjectures of the condition of the property. Now, let me say that the remaining tenant, I have learned from the one who just vacated, that the remaining tenant had tried to purchase this home prior to my purchase, and she didn't have sufficient funds. So I think she's got a bone to pick. Obviously, why was she trying to buy a property that's in such egregious condition as this? So I did not find out, I did not receive a certified copy in the mail. And my father was in public health. He ran the Palm Beach County, the Martin County, and the Leon County health departments in Florida for many years. I kind of know how these things should be done. I did not receive a certified copy of this report. I received nothing. On November 29th, I was in the first status hearing with these tenants in court with a mediator and was blindsided by this report. So the tenant who left asked for, it was all a matter of negotiation. That's all they got this report for. So they can get damages from me. She asked for $16,500 on her $1,175 a month apartment. I had no idea what was in this report. Blindsided me. So I offered her $5,000. She happily left, rescinded her complaints. Now, I have been attempting to address these complaints that they keep making since I purchased the property. On September 7th, I went in. I made an appointment with the two of them. I went in. I said, what is this leakage that you're talking about in the ceiling, this bathroom leakage? The tenant who's just left, the one downstairs with the hole in her ceiling, and her son both told me that was fixed by a plumber 9 months ago. There is no mold. I have now made a bigger hole because now it's in my possession and I'm allowed to do that. I have taken my camera and I have put it all in and I have photographs that there is zero mold, there is zero dampness. I had my contractor come in subsequent to finding out about this. I had to call Rebecca Jersix and say, what is this report? I received a certified letter December 1st. I sent you a certified letter and it got there the next day. I didn't receive it the first, it was sent the first. So here I am, blindsided. I've attempted to address these issues. So I, doing my due diligence, got my contractor in the Friday the 3rd after receiving this. My contractor did a thorough inspection. He talked to the tenant in front of her representative, Nan Weil, and she kept leaving. She didn't want to answer any questions. All he was trying to ascertain was, when did various damages, all these things in the report start, so that he could figure out what the problem was, how to fix it. She kept leaving. Nan had to keep going to get her. Finally, she said, I don't want to say anything. My attorney told me not to say anything because, and when I addressed it on November 22nd, I brought up, before even getting this, I brought in a plumber of my own volition because I hadn't heard from her. I hadn't gotten any replies on what this problem was that they keep bringing up through their attorney. But then when I go to address it, oh no, we don't want anything done. Oh no, that was fixed. So I brought a plumber in again. She told me that La Provo Engineering had looked at this problem in the past. They had fixed it, okay? When my contractor went in, he said, there's no way that there could be a problem with the overflow drain. There's no way anyone could have seen that without ripping out the wall, which was not done. But now that I've been able to go in from downstairs, my contractor said undeniably This is tenant neglect. She's splashing water over the side of her tub, okay? I can go down bullet by bullet. The owner shall provide screens. There's screens in every window. This is one of the damaged screens she gave me the other day. I said, if you've got damaged ones, put them in the hall. I'll give you good ones. If
Yes.
you look really carefully.
If I can just interrupt for a quick minute, rather than, as I mentioned before, I have read your extensive appeal. Yes,
Yeah.
I've read your extensive.
I have photographs.
Yes, I'm glad to see that. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Why is there leakage? She's got this on her toilet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Rather than go through and.
Rather than hear me out.
No, we've received your written appeal. We've read it. We're glad you're here tonight. And rather than.
Dishwasher, that's how she keeps her dishwasher.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We've seen this. We've seen,
Oh,
we've
yeah,
read your appeal. What I would like to do is move.
The
in the direction that
threshold
Commissioner-
on July 29th, no
Yes, yes.
damage. She's
Miss-
actively damaging my property.
Ms. McAllister, if you will please.
I will. But I
Yes,
would.
I understand.
For a moment,
I understand your frustration, ma'am.
I
do.
will just say, I am aggrieved. I am appealing. I want these both. I do not want the one on the first floor to be put on hold. I want to deal with both of these. I don't want anything hanging over my head. And the reason that I am appealing them and I want them thrown out for no grounds is because they are being used in a court of law against me. And if I just make the correction, that's establishing the fact that there was an issue to begin with, which
Yes.
there is not.
I appreciate your perspective on this. You've exercised your right to appeal.
Okay.
You can appreciate knowing that you're familiar with public health, that we have gone in to do our job as we are required to do.
Mhm.
I appreciate that you've appealed. It's your right, and I'm glad you're here talking to us. But what I would like to do, since you are taking issue with this correction order in total, is be able to come in myself with with Rebecca and Ned and go through these items person to person, actually have eyeballs on it. And we can do it with both units. My understanding is, as a point of procedure, Rebecca is asking us to put on hold this other correction. Am I correct in that, Rebecca, as a point of procedure? Can we do that?
I do not wish for that to happen. And do I have?
I appreciate that. But as a question to Rebecca, is that something that you're asking as a procedural move? Or is that something that, Rebecca, that we can, at our site visit, I wish to schedule, that we can deal with that then?
No, I'm asking you to deal with this now procedurally because the unit is unoccupied now. So as I said at the start of this, that the housing code only deals with occupancy. And so because the unit's not occupied, our correction order still holds, but there isn't the 30-day deadline. There's no strict timeline to get these violations fixed because there's no one living there. And I know Miss McAllister says that she doesn't intend to have the unit ever rented again. But if without the procedure of putting it on hold and not rescinding the correction order, there's nothing for the Board of Health to fall back on. If 5 years down the road, we find that the unit is re-rented and our correction orders or violations are still outstanding and never corrected. This has happened before, as you know, with
Yes.
other
Yes.
places in town.
Now,
I'm occupying it. I actually live in the house. So
Okay.
I'm occupying the apartment.
I understand that. At our reinspection, if we procedurally do what you would wish us to do, when we meet for a site visit, can we also address that unit? Since those violations are being contested at that time. I know procedurally we have something we'd like to do, but can we also look at it at our reinspection?
Miss McAllister, since she she has ownership of that unit, has to give us permission to enter into her unit. So
Okay.
she could deny us access to that unit. So we
I'm not
we
going
could
to do that.
only,
Oh,
so that would be a potential blip, but she seems like she would work with us.
I am very happy to have you come into the
Okay.
unit. I want you to come into the
Okay.
unit.
Okay.
I don't
that-
want anything holding over. It is not good to have these things just outstanding. They can
Yes,
cause
I-
all kinds of problems down the line. I'm
Yes,
not young.
I-
What if my
okay.
son inherited this this?
I appreciate that. So what I'd like to do tonight is I would like to procedurally fulfill Rebecca's request, and I'd also like to schedule a point where we can get into your unit and the other unit. I know that the tenant of that unit has to also allow us entry, so I would like to schedule that. I know this is still a correction order. You're not in violation of this correction order. I think our board would be willing to extend whatever timeline is on there to the point at which we can get a meeting, whether that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. That's what I would like to see happen, so we can do this in person at the site and we can go down point by point.
I don't want any extension. I want this over as quickly as possible.
Yes, I think we all want this to be resolved as quickly as we can. I know that sometimes scheduling with tenants can sometimes take a little bit of time, but I think that we all want to see this expedited.
She started it. She really needs to be
Right.
available. This is
Okay.
what I have dealt with.
Okay,
I have dealt with for 3.5 months. Is this
very good. I appreciate that.
complaint and then refusal to.
Yes,
be
so
willing to-
in order to continue with our public hearing, what we've heard from you, I think we're in agreement of the path that we need to take. We need to open it up for a public comment time. And then we can move to our Board of Health just agreeing on this course of action. And then we'll be able to take a vote. So we'll have some public comment time, then we'll deal with what we need to deal with procedurally. And we'll try to get this moving as quickly as possible. With that being said, is there anyone who would like to comment on this issue? I see one hand raised, Nan Weil. Give me a second, Nan, and I will promote you to panelist so we can see and hear what you have to say. Should take just a second. All right, Nan, I see your box. You have the floor if you'd like to speak.
It's just a point of clarification. There was an inaccurate statement made by Ms. McAllister, which was, I was not there present with the plumber's inspection as a representative of the tenant. I was there unofficially as a friend extending a neighborly kindness. And in no way was I officially representing the tenant. And the tenant was very compliant and polite in coming up when there were questions. And very importantly, she was able to evade what she feared might be potentially upsetting encounter. Since, as you can tell, the sentiment between Ms. Bannister and her tenants is a little contested. That's all I want to say. I'm not official. I was not officially there in any capacity. I was there as a neighbor and a good citizen. That was it.
Oh, okay,
Just to say, Ms. Weil, the only reason I referred to you as her representative was that you told me on September 7th when you showed me into her apartment and I asked you about the leakage problem and the door and several things and you had no knowledge. You said you were here as her representative, and that's the only reason that I referred to you in that manner.
okay. We appreciate the comments from Nan and you, Ms. McAllister. If there's anyone else who would like to speak on this, raise your hand. I don't see anybody. So we'll move over to our discussion and what we need to do procedurally.
May I say one thing?
Yes,
I entered upon ownership of this property attempting to contact each of the tenants, attempting to talk with them and work with them. I purchased it to be a single family home, not to be a landlord, but I tried to work with them and help. And I was treated, they set up this contention, and it was never anything that I wanted to be this way.
Okay, thank you for that point of clarification. Any comments from you, Peter or Ruby?
Nope.
I agree with all that has gone on. I don't have any other comments.
Okay, so Rebecca, as a point of order, you would please restate what you'd like us to do for procedure.
I think the only thing that I would ask you to vote on is putting a hold on Unit 12's correction order, not rescinding it, but putting a hold on it to be fully completed by any time in which the unit is reoccupied by anyone other than the owner.
Okay. All right. Seeing or hearing no more comments from the board, I have no more. I think we can take a motion to close this public hearing. Look for a motion to do that.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Rebecca?
I'm sorry. I wonder if we have to schedule the inspection before we close the public hearing, or can we just have that in Board of Health discussion time? Because I would like to do that now since Ms. McAllister is present.
Be happy to. What about Ms. Jackson, though? I have no idea what, she's not in town currently. So I know that I inquired of her regarding the pest control person to put some steel wool in her baseboards, which I had not been able to do because the downstairs tenant never gave me permission to go into her unit. And he insisted he had to do all four at once.
Yes.
So now I'm able to, I've been trying to schedule that. And she said she would be available on Tuesday for that, Tuesday or Thursday. So I gather she's going to be back in town next week, but I don't know.
Let's make every effort, Rebecca, to.
I'm available.
Okay.
I spoke to the occupant today. She called me when she heard about the meeting and couldn't attend. And she gave me two days of availability. The first being Monday, December 20th, after 2 p.m. and anytime on Tuesday, December 21st. So those are the two.
I have a son who's going to be on his Christmas vacation. Seriously? I mean, this is just not right. This is.
I'm sorry. It's very inconvenient, but these are the times.
I have a 15-year-old son. He's going to be at home.
It's all the holidays for all of us.
But
I'm making myself available.
It's December 9th.
Yes, I appreciate. Like I said, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes these things can take longer than anyone wants.
I know. She's got 3 more months before her court date.
We understand, but if Rebecca, if those are 2 dates that we know, let's reach out to her with all due haste tomorrow morning, first thing. And we can confirm one of those times. I can be available both of those days. Just name the time. I'll work and I'll meet you guys.
Albeit inconvenient and not ideal. Any times within those timeframes work for you, Ms. McAllister?
What day of the week is the 20th?
It was Monday, December 20th after 2 p.m. or at any point on Tuesday, December 21st.
I think December 21st, earlier in the day would be preferable because we don't want to get into it being dark. We've got a lot of exterior space. We've got the basement. I want you to be able to see clearly everything. So I would say sometime in the morning on December 21st.
Right, that would be great.
If I have to wait until this time, I mean, I
Yeah.
never get to call any of the shots here. So
Yes,
that's the way it works.
Yes. Rebecca, we can communicate to the tenant that the board really wants to get in there. And since we know that's express the urgency of which we want to conclude this matter.
If she's able to have the pest control man come next Tuesday or Thursday, she will be here.
This is not ideal for anyone, but this is the time. If we, and if she can meet us sooner, put that out there too. If she can meet
The
us. Sooner.
timing, I wasn't given any
We-
ability to choose the timing on this either. I've been trying to correct her issues since September 2nd, when I
Yes,
bought the property.
I appreciate your perspective, Ms. McAllister. I do. But this is our procedure. We're trying to expedite it as quick as we can. Okay. So with that being said, I think we can now take a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion.
Oh, we have one person with their hand raised.
Eileen, she's our point. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, Eileen. Let's have to figure out how to unmute her. There she goes. Did you have a question, Eileen? I see your hand up. Was that inadvertent? I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So I think we can proceed with our closing our public hearing. So we can take a vote on what we need to do. Sorry,
Make
Peter.
a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. Our roll call vote is Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. The hearing being closed, we have sought to schedule reinspection on either the 20th or the 21st, but if there's a time sooner, obviously that will be done. But we need to vote to put a hold on unit, what was that unit again, Rebecca, for the official language?
Well,
Downstairs unit 1.
Okay, unit 1. So we'll look for a motion to put a hold on that correction order. Did you want to make that motion? Peter?
sorry. I make a motion. Well, give me the details.
To put a hold on the correction order for unit 1.
I make a motion, we put a hold on the correction order for unit 1.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. Our roll call is Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you, Ms. McAllister, for coming to the meeting. Hopefully we'll see you sooner than later.
Thank you.
And thank you for your patience on this matter. Okay. Our next topic is continuing our public hearing on our glyphosate moratorium. So with that being said, let's see. Sorry, I'm just getting used to this the webinar mode here. I think that's good. Okay. So sorry, we're getting Eileen is our advisor on all. She said not to, Eileen's comment was that we ought not to have ended the hearing as you're continuing the business. Yes,
Oh, that was my fault. I'm getting used to webinar format. I guess I had to, or one of us had to unmute her. Whoops.
well,
Did we bring her back to the floor?
I see her email. We've already voted on closing our public hearing. I think we can sort out the,
Good vote to reopen it.
if we put it on the, yes, procedurally, can we put it on our next agenda and reopen it then, or do we need to reopen it now?
No, we have to continue it now.
Okay,
So we would have to vote to reopen. And I don't know. Let's ask Eileen.
I don't know if she's still present at the meeting.
I think we can vote to reopen it.
Vote to continue? Okay, so just to stay on the procedurally, to stay out of trouble, we'll take a quick motion to reopen the public hearing so that we can continue it to our next meeting.
You could
Which-
unmute Eileen now if you want clarity.
I believe she's unmuted now.
There you go. Now she is.
Do you hear us, Eileen?
No.
Well, anyhow, I got her gist. I've seen her email. So I think that's right on the continuation. So while we're still here, while we're on this issue, let's procedurally jump through the hoops here.
Well, the only thing is what I'm seeing in the email has more to do with what happens at the site inspection.
Yes,
But it doesn't seem like it's actually about our procedure right now.
yes, and the intention of the site meeting is to be able to actually constructively go through.
Yeah, go through the list.
Yes, rather than do it a back and forth and not being able to see anything. It wasn't to make any decisions. It was more so that we could all see it. The intention being that we would revisit this matter at our next meeting and be able to definitively.
Okay, so we're reopening it so that we can continue it.
That's true. We do need to do that. I was caught up in the moment of trying to get moving. I apologize for that.
So you want a motion to reopen and then a motion to continue.
I second.
All right, I'm in agreement. So we'll take a roll call on the motion to reopen. Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. We need a motion to continue this public meeting to our next meeting date, which will be January 6th.
I make a motion to continue the meeting to to the public hearing till January 6th.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. Roll call is Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. All right, this public hearing is officially continued
One question.
to January 6th. Yes,
I'm sorry, may I enter these photographs of the specific places that have been violated?
yes. Bring them to our site visit. Like
Bring them to town hall?
you can
Okay,
bring them to town hall. You can have them with us when we conduct the site visit.
no, because then we'll see it in person. I'll bring them tomorrow to town hall.
And just for clarification, this site visit, we won't make decisions. It's more of a fact finding so we can see everything. And at the continuation of next meeting, then we can report back to the board. That's the whole point of this.
Can I appeal this hold of the other violation? Because I just don't like having things just on hold in perpetuity.
That I don't know if you can appeal.
Makes me very uncomfortable. I mean, if I've got a violation, I want to address it.
Yes.
I come from a family of public health people. I
Yes.
don't,
Without delving back into it, this public hearing is closed.
okay,
So let's talk about it at our site visit.
all
Do
right.
you want me to address Cynthia's question?
Yes, please, if
Okay, because the way that you can reverse a hold is by going through the correction order and either correcting or proving that all of the violations on that correction order are fully abated, then it goes away. And then it's not on hold, it's not lingering, but the Board of Health has to say it's fully abated.
So I can address it at this time. Oh, I
Yes.
thought it was just that I couldn't do anything about it. It was just going to be.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And that
Thank
way we could even put a letter in the file saying that this correction order is fully abated, and then you can do what you want with the unit. You can live in it, you can rent it out.
It's done. That's all I wanted. I want it done.
Very good. All right. I think we've satisfied our
Well, if
procedure that we need to do.
this one last question, all of these photographs are refuting what existed at the time of the inspection. What I want the inspection thrown out. I don't want to just correct it.
Well, I think, yes, I think we have,
That's the purpose of my appeal.
yes, we have to re-inspect in order to determine
Okay,
if your claims are valid or not. That's what we have to do.
okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I think we've resolved this procedurally, and we are on the course. We know what we need to do here. All right, thank you again. Okay, we will now move on to our public hearing concerning the glyphosate moratorium. And,
Michael, do you have the mechanism to bring it back to just the board?
Yes, I'm doing that right now.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I have a quick question about that past one, because wouldn't these violations be an issue and apply to even to a homeowner? Why would they not matter if they weren't being rented out?
It's a good legal question that I don't have exact wording for, but
We've had issues with correction orders, I believe, maybe not, where it was owner occupied.
you're right. So there are, okay, a second to think about it. So the housing code does apply to any residential or commercial building, but this particular correction order, I think where the violations are cited, they only matter if someone's renting it out, as opposed to like if they're, I guess, other than like the debate over mouse infestation. So if someone has violations on their property, like accumulating garbage or providing a source of habitation for rodents or any other vermin that are affecting the neighborhood or creating a public nuisance. So that would be a scenario in which we could issue a citation or a correction order to a single family dwelling that's only owner occupied. But maybe it's just a question of practice, but I can't really imagine a scenario of someone calling the health department about a leak or mold in their own unit.
So, Rebecca, if the owner issues a statement stating that she would like to live in the home as her own home, and she is not renting out as long as she is the owner, so that she's no longer renting, this is her home, do we still need to go through with this?
It's a good question, and I don't mean to sound untrusting, but I guess I would want something a little bit more binding than someone's word. Just because we've had situations where we've been told that, oh, no, the units are unoccupied, no one's ever going to live in there again. And then 3 years down the road, we find out that people are living there, and all of our violations from the previous correction order have never been fixed. So I would feel more comfortable closing out a correction order by either, having this documented that we've put it on hold, and that's then the onus is on the property owner to notify us before they rent it out, or have it documented that the correction order is fully abated, and then they can do what they want. That's
Yes.
my professional opinion.
Okay.
I got it.
Thanks.
All right. We'll try it third time. Third time's a charm. If we're all prepared, let's reopen our public hearing on our glyphosate moratorium. So we need a motion to continue this public hearing.
I make a motion to continue public hearing related to glyphosate.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. Our roll call is Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. Rebecca, do you have an update for us on our latest status?
I think it would be easier if I shared my screen. Do you think, I mean, I don't have an update really. I mean, I made the edits that we talked about last month, and I formulated a notice of intent application based on what we talked about it in the last session of our public hearing. So I think if I just bring it up on the screen, we can go through those changes together.
Sure, please do.
1 second. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is moratorium. Let me see if I can somehow bring up. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we'll go through the moratorium language first, and then we'll look at the notice of intent draft. So what's in red is what was changed from that's not,
No, that's
not what we're
proposed.
talking about yet. Sorry, 1 second. Here we go. Okay, this is our notice, our moratorium draft. We'll get to our public health advisory later on.
I
Okay.
still see
Yeah.
the advisory, hasn't quite changed yet.
You see that? Can you see the moratorium now?
No.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Unshare and then share again.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay. Computers are supposed to make our lives easier, but they often don't.
Okay, can you see the moratorium now?
Yes.
Okay. good.
Yes.
Okay, so what's in red is what changed from our November public hearing to now.
Mhm.
So I assume that you all had a chance to look this over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and here is the application for the notice of intent. So this is where we would have the applicant's information, their company name, where their headquarters are, where they receive mail, telephone number, email address, address of work would be, maybe I have to clarify that. I think that's the same thing as the site address. So I think I had that in there as a duplicate. I'll have to change that. So what I intended was for them to write the address of where the work will be conducted. And then applicator information. So their name, Massachusetts license number. So that's their herbicide or pesticide license number. Space for 3 applicants. There might be more. This is what we talked about during our public hearing in November, is a description of work. So a map of the property. Map must be to scale and include property lines, all private and public water supplies. So that's wells or, you know, Long Pond Road, Round Hill Pond, whatever, open bodies of water, location of all places of human and animal habitations. So just a little delineation of like this is where the nearest house is, or this is where stables are, this is where beehives are kept. Like that was the intention. Approximate dates and times of work. I put approximate because I think it was mentioned at our last meeting that sometimes rain or inclement weather pushes out dates, and it's kind of hard to get an exact start date. So week of December 7th would work. A list of all herbicides to be used. So any glyphosate containing products should be listed here. And if they wanted to really be informative, any other herbicides that they plan to use on site would be helpful, I'm sure, for the Board of Health. Method of application, will they be using droppers? Will they be spraying? Whatever else, whatever other methods they might be using should be listed here. And then this is really what we highlighted as important from our last meeting, was a plan for notifying the general public as well as users of the space, because we're talking about town-owned and operated property. We're talking about public open space here. So there should be a robust plan of notifying the public. So it's not just, you know, a letter sent to the homeowner, it's signage at the site at minimum, and then a notice to all immediate abutters. We'd like to, I think, see above and beyond that, but that's the minimum of what we talked about last month. And then, of course, signing the application, and then a space for us in the office to say, this is when we received it. Was it approved? Was it denied? And if it was denied, the day that we sent the denial letter to the applicant. Appeal, Board of Health hearing date, etc.
Rebecca,
Yes.
would it make sense to put list of chemical names of herbicides to be used?
I think that would make sense.
Because they could write Roundup or, you know, or a commercial name, and we wouldn't know exactly what is actually in it that they actually are using. So the chemical name would be better under lists
Okay.
of all herbicides.
So
Okay.
instead of saying list of all herbicides, list of all chemicals, is that what you'd like to see, that language?
Chemical names of herbicides used.
So list all chemical names of herbicides to be used.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fine.
I don't disagree with that. I just want to say
Yeah.
that that's moving the target a little bit beyond glyphosate. I do think it would be informative and helpful for us to know lists of chemicals, because as we're going through this learning process, we might find out that other chemicals in these products or within these applications are also harmful or maybe detrimental or have long-term side effects, whatever. But just want to point out that it could be moving away from the main target of this moratorium, if that's an issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Notification plan. Is there a time to when this has to be posted? Like signage at the site, notice to all immediate butters. Is it, I believe you had said a week or 2 weeks, something like that?
I don't remember exactly what we said. I think there was a conversation
Oh,
about,
14 days.
yeah.
Oh, it's submitted, but then it doesn't tell you when the abutters need to be notified.
We can add that in there specifically. That's a good point.
I think it would make sense for it to, the on-site signage to be placed, immediately prior to work being done. Because and that's typically my understanding of what they do, that the days
Mhm.
they put signs up, because like we were talking about, sometimes the weather can delay their schedule, so it wouldn't make sense for them put some
Mhm.
days in advance. I think it makes, for what they're doing, and I'm growing more familiar with what they're doing, it's very surgical. A lot of times it's a cut and dab or, spot spraying. There's no big, large scale spraying. So I think signage during the time, in the area during the time of application, but in terms of the notice to abutters, I think that should be I think we can talk about what that needs to be. I mean, certainly it needs, again, it would be a time frame. We plan to do a application, between this period, signage will be directly in the area that's affected, something to that degree. And during the week of, so
Mhm.
something like if they have this NOI submitted to us and they list that their time frame, I think it should be something similar to that, because they're projecting when they think they can do it. So how that exactly works, I think I mean, it may have to be something to, at the earliest point possible, because if they get in there and they have an intent to do something one week and it rains that whole week and they get put off another week, it makes no sense for them to have said, oh, we plan to do it this week, but it got pushed to the next week. So
Mhm.
that may be too,
Mhm.
but I would be comfortable with saying, that they be notified. Because really it's the signage on site where the application is being done that's going to have the greatest effect.
I was just thinking if the abutters want to have like a social gathering the week before, they had already planned it, but they
Yep.
know that there's going to be spraying, that they could plan ahead of time.
Yep.
So they don't end up going to the picnic and finding out that there's glyphosate sprayed all over the grass
Well,
or whatever.
yeah, again, they're many times that the areas that they're going in to do this work is areas that you wouldn't typically be doing that in. They're overgrown, unnavigable areas that they're clearing out and applying
Uh-huh.
the majority of the time. So I think we have to come up with something that, either, a week prior or to the greatest, something to, a week prior is ideal, but we have to allow for some projection of a time frame. And we will be providing with this list of abutters, which I think is only fair that we do that. Since it's town-owned land, we'll be able to know fairly quickly, and we'll have generated a list of. So I think too, it should be, a week prior to planned application, something like that.
Does it make sense to also add in a requirement if work does need to be rescheduled due to rain or whatever else, that they notify the health department of any changes to their application? And so then maybe we can assist in getting out additional addendums to abutters.
Well, if certainly if it got delayed more than 2 weeks, you know, that's why I'm saying that the notice to abutters has to have a broader range. Because in order to mitigate against having to go back, this whole back and forth and generating more busy work, I think knowing that it's weather dependent, there has to be a range. So the notification should be, you know, that glyphosate is planned on being applied during this time period. And I think a week or two time period would be probably the best thing to do. That way, and if it moves beyond that, you know, say it got delayed for beyond that 2-week time period, then, you know, maybe it makes sense to do that. But I think we should allow a sufficient enough time period, which I think 2 weeks would do it at this point. At which time, if it goes beyond the original 2-week window, because they're, or on their notice of intent, they're giving us a range of when they want to apply. If the application has to go beyond that window of intended time, then they have to notify us so we can update the abutters. How does that work? I think that's fair. They're giving us a time frame which they intend to do it. If it goes beyond that, they'll let us know, then we can resubmit to abutters. That makes sense to you, Ruby?
Yeah,
Okay, and you, Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
Is that the last thing to discuss? You, Rebecca, last point?
You want me to pull up the moratorium? We can go through that, or have you looked at it?
No, the language is good.
I
Yeah.
think the notice of intent is good with these, if we make these edits to it.
If you wanted to, if you want to go so far as to vote tonight, you can, I'm sure you can vote approving this with the edits made. That's an option.
Okay. Well, I'm amenable to do that unless we have to open the floor up here. If we hear, I'm amenable to doing that, but let's hear from some people. And then after that, we can decide. If you guys are okay with moving forward to hearing comments, I am. Are you guys okay with going forward?
Yes.
All right, what I would like to do is to state that, and what we want, we've heard lengthy comments from many people, which are greatly appreciated. And so what I would like to open the floor up tonight, I would like to hear comments specifically on our edits that we've made and on the brief discussion we've had tonight. I think we know what the positions are of the folks who've spoken at our previous meetings. So I'd like to, and
We've read the recent emails.
yes, we've read all communications. And again, we're very thankful for people who've taken the time to send those in. But in the interest of time and efficiency, I'd like to keep comment tonight to those items we've discussed and those edits that we've looked at. With that being said, I see 2 hands up already. And I also like to put let's say a 3-minute time on speaking, because we have other things that we need to get to tonight. So the hands are up. First up is Tom. Let me just activate the panelist here and we'll hear from you. And again, we'll try to keep this to 3 minutes tonight. So a couple seconds, Tom, your box will appear and your box is up. Is it box or screen? It's a box with a name at this point. Tom, you can unmute yourself and turn on your screen. You're still muted, sir.
Oh, I have to unmute him. Oh,
Rebecca's gonna unmute you. How
there
come-
we go. Sorry.
He's still muted.
I am now unmuted.
Yes. Okay, sir, you got 3 minutes.
Thanks, Michael.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
yeah, listen, I would say, could Rebecca send out the edits? Because quite honestly, she scrolled down through them. I can't read that fast, and I don't think they were submitted or available previously. Am I mistaken?
Yes, I sent them to you.
So I obviously I can't really comment on the edits because I haven't read them. I guess I would comment, since you did spend some time on the application form. Hey, what happens in Connecticut is maybe worth looking at. What happens when an application goes before the Sheffield or Stockbridge Conservation Commission might be worth looking at. I'm not sure you need to invent the wording from scratch. It also should be understood, hey, there are already pre-existing requirements that are established by the state of Massachusetts and by the federal government on how you need, what information is needed. In Connecticut, just as a for example, the requirement is at the time that you're about to do the application, you put out the little yellow square signs that explain that herbicides have been used. There's a date on the sign. The signs remain up for 24 hours and then they're removed. That's basically considered just the drying time. It should be said that weather can be an extreme variable. You may be aware that we had, at least in Northwest Connecticut, the wettest July on record. That record goes back a century. And it continued to be a very wet August. So the variability of weather has proved to be extreme in this current year. Many applicators never got to a lot of their jobs just because of that reason. You know, as far as notification, signage seems like the reasonable thing. I mean, we just got to keep in mind, I don't think we're talking about aerial applications. And it's true that any licensed applicator is not going to spray when it's windy. They're looking for still dry weather. So drift is almost a non-issue. And I would add education about what herbicides vary. And quite honestly, glyphosate is not considered detrimental to pollinators. And I guess I would say, though I haven't seen that edit of the moratorium, the notion, as it's the last document I saw from October, the correlation of making Great Barrington a pollinator friendly town because it has a moratorium on glyphosate is a false equivalency. In fact, it may be a contradiction. I guess I would end by saying any of the application form ought to be, the applicants such as Jess Toro and Sari Hoy deserve the courtesy of review for your benefit, really, to understand what they understand of what really makes sense. They are noted for best management practices, and we don't have to assume that they're going to be spilling the glyphosate in the Housatonic River. So I would just say, give some of the people, or Tom Lautenheiser from Massachusetts Audubon, or to Julie Richmond of Trustees of Reservations. These are people who employ Jess and Sari to do herbicide applications to protect habitat on Mass Audubon property, the organization that's known for its protection of pollinators and birds. So I would say, get some expertise involved in defining what really makes logical sense for Great Barrington. It's not that Great Barrington exists in its own bubble. There are other people out there dealing with invasives and dealing with herbicides who are knowledgeable and can share some of that knowledge with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nan, you're up. Let me just promote you. There you go. And your box should appear in a second. There you go, Nan. You have the floor.
Hello, yeah, I just have two things to add in terms of, Tom just mentioned being respectful and collaborative with the applicators. And I think that I'm going to make two suggestions, which just indicate that the Board of Health is willing to take on some of the onus of notification, like of the abutters that isn't mentioned in the application, that the Board of Health being connected with Town Hall has access to abutters on all properties, and that you are going to be doing the outreach for that. And I would think also, point two, that the person that's submitting the application, the businesses submitting the application, would probably like to know that they can have a response from the BOH. For instance, the second week of the month is when you respond to these kinds of things, since you have your meeting the first week of the month. And that way it would give some sort of regularity and some sort of, some sort of respectful, courteous acknowledgement to the applicators. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And next up is Andrea Ponaritis. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name, but let me promote you to panelist and I'd like to hear what you have to say. Your box should pop up in a second here. All right, we see you, Andrea.
Hi, thanks very much for hearing me. My name is Andrea Ponarides. I live at 30 Seekonk Road. I am a newly appointed member of the Agricultural Commission in Great Barrington and hope to be confirmed by the Select Board on December 20th. I work in a professional capacity on issues related to climate resilience, agroecology, and food security. And in that capacity, we have been following the growing number of countries, which is about 42 so far, and dozens of US cities and municipalities that are limiting the use of glyphosate or banning it entirely. In that capacity, I'd really like to commend you for moving in this direction as well. I've also been a beekeeper for about 15 years, and that's why I want to address you this evening. As a beekeeper, I would strongly support a full moratorium on glyphosate use. I understand that that's not what we're talking about here tonight. I also feel I need to mention that the statement that glyphosate is not harmful to pollinators is controversial at best. There's a lot of research out there that is quite recent that contradicts that. And I don't want to get into that point right now, but I really feel very uncomfortable letting that statement stand. As a beekeeper, it feels like there are a number of things that could be taken into consideration before any application of glyphosate happens, either spraying, which I understand is, we're being told that's not really the case, or any more topical application. Just as examples, a few things that we could do would be to eliminate any application during the time that the plant being sprayed could be used as bee forage. This means the flowering period of the plant, and typically 3 days beforehand and 3 days afterwards. Another option is, or another important example is to limit the application to the times that the pollinators are not so active. This would be either at nighttime, which I understand is possibly inconvenient, or in late evening. And then another possibility to move forward would be to inform beekeepers when applications might be taking place, sort of in the spirit as you're talking about notifying abutters. Of course, bees don't recognize property lines, and they typically travel between 1 and 3 miles for their forage. but I'm wondering if there could be some sort of kind of voluntary registry of beekeepers that could be where beekeepers could sign up and receive notices when any abutter got a notice that applications were going to happen. As Mr. Zetterstrom mentioned, you know, others have crossed this path before. And so there may be examples of other towns that have taken pollinators into account this way. I don't know what they are. These are just a few ideas that I thought might be useful. I would be very interested in following further discussion on this and stand ready to help in any way possible. And I thank you for your work on this. It's so very important. And I thank you for hearing me this evening.
Yes, thank you for your comments, Andrea. I'd like to respond on one. I believe in some of our previous meetings, it was explained to us that they never apply when plants are in flower because of that risk to bees, but they don't do that.
Thank you for telling me that.
Yes, as for the other comments you've made, I think we're using this period of moratorium as to get as much additional information as we can, and we'd be happy to have your help and hear from you as we move forward. I think we're going to be looking to hear from more people, and at some point over the next year, we're going to towards the end of the year, we're going to have a few meetings dedicated to this so we can see what worked, what didn't, and know how to go forward after this moratorium that's up for a year.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for taking this on.
Yep, thank you very much for speaking. I see a call-in user. I don't see the name, but I will promote who's
I'm
ever.
just gonna allow them
Yes,
to talk
yes,
first, maybe, so they can, oh, you already promoted them.
Hello?
yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. This is Vivian Orlowski. I chair the Agricultural Commission, and I second the concerns of our incoming new member, Andrea Panaritis. And I'd also like to comment just off the cuff. Certainly can provide more information later for the Board of Health about the statement that pollinators are not affected by glyphosate. For example, there was a study done and reported in 2018 by Nancy Moran, a biologist at the University of Texas at Austin, and who said that while pollinators themselves are not targeted, the bee itself has no molecular targets for glyphosate, which is probably the basis of these statements by the industry and by others. But the gut bacteria of the bees do have targets. And thus, glyphosate exposure is like taking too many antibiotics and upsetting the balance of good bacteria that supports the immunity and digestion. And for example, another statement, we all know that glyphosate is an antibiotic. It's actually patented as an antibiotic, says Nathan Donnelly, a senior scientist at the Center for Biological Diversity. But very few researchers have actually dived into this issue. And the good thing is that it's starting to change. So this is from 3 years ago. We need to provide more recent information. But in my understanding about glyphosate, yes, one of its damages is not that the bees keel over upon immediate exposure, but by damaging their internal systems, in this case, the effects of antibiotics on their gut. It does have, it is detrimental to their health and to their functioning. So I just wanted to point out that the other statements about being pollinator friendly is consistent with using glyphosate is not a simple matter, and there's certainly strong evidence to the contrary.
Great. Thank you for your comments, Vivian. We're always pleased to hear from you and other members of the Agricultural Commission.
And our town meeting in 2016 did vote by acclamation to make Great Barrington a pollinator-friendly community, which includes minimal use of herbicides and pesticides harmful to bees and other pollinators. So this is not just a personal opinion of mine, but it's a longstanding policy now of the town.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see, is there anyone who we haven't heard from tonight who would like to speak on this issue? I see Tom's hand up and not seeing anyone else. We could hear from him briefly again, since we don't see anyone else. Tom, if you could keep it brief. We'll
Yeah.
hear from you one more time before we move on. Yes, you're unmuted. We hear you.
Okay. Hey, thank you. Listen, I stand corrected. I was really speaking in the context of the various discussions that we had previously had about the use of glyphosate for the control of invasive plants, and in particular, the types of licensed applicators that do that kind of work. And that has been repeatedly stated in these meetings, they do not apply glyphosate to plants in foliage during the blossom period. So that was the basis for my comment. But I would just further say, hey, Connecticut has a pollinator friendly act which focuses on neonicotinoids, which are devastating to bees. And I'm trying to draw that distinction, both that we're not using neonicotinoids, which is of course an insecticide, but we're using an herbicide, and we're using it discreetly, and we're not using it during the blossom period. If you do a foliar application on barberry in March, there's no blossom there. By the way, there's no bee activity. It's people that are like Jess and Sari who know these things and choose their time accordingly. I guess I would add, declaring Great Barrington to be a pollinator-friendly town by declaration and inhibiting or doing nothing or postponing or making awkward the control of invasive plants will reduce its pollinator-friendly habitat dramatically and exponentially from year to year to year. So it's simply not a question of being chemically hands-off. It's a question of, is the town going to be engaged in managing invasive plants seriously, in order to make room for native plants, which are the plants that native pollinators and wild bees are attracted to. I gotta say, just lastly, hey, we cleared invasive plants at North Campus of Houstonic Valley Regional High School, and those same Connecticut entomologists that did the neonicotinoid legislation came up, and after our treatment period, they counted 17 species of wild bees on our restored property 3 years later. So environmental management is complex. Timing of invasive management is required, but the benefits far outweigh the costs. And it needs to be measured not at the day of the application, but in the overall long-term benefits to the landscape. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Ruby, you're muted again.
Oh, I just want to say thank you.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were muted.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no more requests for comment, I think we can discuss whether we want to vote tonight, or would we want to spend a little bit more time hammering out our notice of intent application? It seems like it might make sense to spend a little time, maybe talk to Shep down the conservation department if you haven't done that already? Have you spoken with him, Rebecca? Or has he seen our application?
No, he's not.
Well, it might, I think it would make sense, since that's, we spent some time talking about that. I'm happy with our language of our moratorium as it stands, but I do think it might make sense to iron out some of these, just to have a clearer notice of intent form and have language spelled out. It's my understanding that if we continue our, this public hearing, when we reopen it, we don't necessarily have to reopen comment time, or do we have to do that? I'm saying, can we reopen to vote, or do we have to go through the whole procedural list?
I believe you can continue the public hearing without reopening the public comment period.
Okay,
So you can close the public comment period tonight, and then if you decide to continue the public hearing, you can just vote at the next meeting, if that's what you decide. Choose to do.
I was just thinking out loud about that. But it seems to me that we should iron this notice of intent form out a little bit more. I think we're all agreed on the language of the moratorium. But it seems to me we ought to just dot that last I and cross that last T on that form. That's my feeling on that. But how do you guys feel about it?
I feel like we could move forward with it, and we have a whole year to make edits and refine it.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it long enough, and I think we need to move forward. We've had, a lot of viewpoints from both sides, and we understand that we do need more information as time goes on. I do think this is a good proposal to start with, and it's for 1 year, so we have the time moving forward.
And Rebecca, the thought occurs to me, if at the outset of this, we start getting a lot of feedback like this NOI form needs to be fixed, can we go back in and edit that? Or we
Well,
have
I
to?
guess what I would do is I would put it as an agenda item, and I would just have it as a standalone thing that we
Right.
discuss and edit and vote on, as
Okay.
opposed to having another public hearing.
Right, well, that was my question. Can we just take that one item and edit that as we go?
As our draft moratorium says now, we've talked about wanting at least 2 of our monthly meetings to have dedicated space to talk about how it's going, what's happened so far. And I think on those 2 public meetings, we should have a public hearing as opposed to just an agenda item. But if we want to make edits or changes along the way, I don't think it needs to be a public hearing.
Okay, well, good. Well, that's why I'd like to be able to have the flexibility if as we move into the next growing season and we start having some ambiguity or we need to tighten up some language, I'd like to be able to know that we can do that easily without a big process. So hearing the intent from you, Peter, and Ruby, then
Rebecca.
do we have to close this public hearing and then vote? Or do we, I see that the next thing is a motion to approve.
I think based on the last experience and the comment from Eileen, it sounds like we would finish this business before we close.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Rebecca.
Sorry, before you vote, I want to ask 2 things that when people were commenting sparked my memory. The first being when and if the health department receives an NOI application, should I bring those applications to be reviewed to the Board of Health? Should I put it on the next, which would affect the timeline, which would affect the deadline in which the application needs to be submitted? So it would go from 14 days to a 30-day notification, like you have to submit this within 30 days of the start of work. So the Board of Health would have time to review this at their next monthly meeting. It's up to you. I think the pros of reviewing each and every application that comes through the Board of the Health Department in this first year is that we can really see the nuances of the application and what a real life scenario would be when it comes time to putting applicators to work, what the details that are absolutely necessary and which should be added, which maybe could be left out. And then a con of that would be that it would be cumbersome for the applicant. It would be another hoop that they have to jump through. It's more time, more preparing, and you know, they go to the Conservation Commission, and then we would be requesting that they come before the Board of Health, or just that their application is reviewed before the Board of Health. So there's pro and con, but I just want to know what you thought about doing it that way.
I think that the idea is good, but we don't want to put more burden on the applicants, and you could bring the details of that to us or to the meeting without having to slow them down during the season. It's probably tight.
If we pursue that, you would authorize me or Ned as your agent to issue the notice of intent application, and then just at our next meeting, go over the details with you.
Correct.
Okay.
I'd like you guys to be able to have the flexibility. If you see something or something concerning or something you don't feel, as is our normal policy, something that you want us to authorize, you have that. I'd like you to have that flexibility, but I agree with Peter. And I know we've talked about this in other conversations, that we want to make it as uncumbersome as possible. And I think our town-owned lands are not so expansive, and the people who our town is using are well-known. I feel comfortable having you guys authorize that.
I agree.
And then the second thing I wanted to ask was we heard, some points about not applicating glyphosate or herbicides when the plant in question is flowering. Is that something that we want to get specific on in our notice of intent? Like, what species what invasive species are you applying glyphosate to? When is it flowering? What time? Do we want to get that specific, since that's what we heard from commenters tonight?
I think it's at this point, I think I'm comfortable knowing that that's not their policy. And I've seen some of these people in their applications, and they're very conscientious in what they do. And I'm comfortable with not having that detail spelled out.
I think it would be really interesting to know. So while not wanting to create a burden and hearing that piece of it, I think that, I think it would be important to learn during this year what is bringing people to use it.
I have to agree. I'm really curious. So, it could be a little bit more burdensome, but I love to know what species they're spraying on or targeting, and when do they flower, just so that we have better understanding of what is actually being targeted.
Did you guys ever get this picture of this little leaflet? It's from our health department.
No, it's from Nan. I don't want to take any credit. Nan brought those for you all.
I strongly encourage you to pick one of these up. You'll learn more than you ever wanted to about invasives.
I mean, I think it's a fair bet to say that most of the what could be glyphosate applied would be knotweed, but I think it would be interesting to see percentage. Is it knotweed? Is it Japanese barberry? Is it something hardy kiwi? What is it?
Well, we could certainly encourage people to list them. I think it would be helpful. I mean, I'm more familiar with it. I mean, my work on the Concom, I see it out my back door. I've seen it in the field. But many people have not. So if, for our board, if we want to, I don't know if we need to require that, but we could list it as, you know, what are the targeted plants? It would certainly be, it will, I agree with you guys. It will be very informative to see and to become more aware of the problem of invasives and just how many there are that we just are so used to seeing in outdoor doors or along the roads. It's very eye-opening just to see how big the problem is. So if we want to put that on there as and stress that this is not meant as a burdensome thing, but it is meant as a educational tool for our board, and I think that could be helpful. Yes.
So we could apply, put a question on the application form as to what are the targeted plants and what are their flowering season. I think it would be good.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? I don't have any. Those are good points you guys have raised.
Also,
Okay.
See one hand raised.
Do we want to hear more comments?
I'm guessing that it's specific to the last thing we were just talking about. Or
Yes.
maybe we do.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll briefly one more time, and I will promote to panelist Tom Zetterstrom one final time this evening. If you could make it ever so brief, sir. We're thank you for your participation, but we don't. Just have to
Oh, 1 second, let me unmute. Okay, Tom, you should be able, there you go.
Hey, is that working?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, just to my credit, let me say thank you to Nan for passing those invasive plants in your backyard brochures onto the town of Great Barrington, and that was the intention. It's since been updated, and I have a new batch of them, which I was using at my Berkshire Botanical Garden lectures last September, October, and I'll provide those with you. They have 8 additional invasive plants in them. It's produced by the Connecticut Conservation District, and it's about identification of plants, and it describes both the mechanical and the chemical treatment of invasive plants. It's quite balanced. And thank you, Michael, for bringing it up. Outreach and education is really what I do. I'm not an applicator. I'm an advocate and an educator. And I would be happy to provide you, if you choose to have a meeting with a speaker on identification and management of invasive plants, be happy to do that with you at some point. So thank you. I will leave off a bunch of brochures. God, how do I do this? At the town hall in an envelope for the Board of Health? Is that get into some mailboxes for you guys?
Yes, you can actually come right upstairs and right into the department, and you can see Rebecca's smiling face, and she'd be happy to.
Hey, fantastic.
Place where we go.
I'll look forward to that. Listen.
Depends on what day you come, whether I'm smiling or not.
Yeah.
I'm just
Listen,
kidding.
it's the most important thing. I should add that the town of Mount Washington, when I spoke to them on this issue, they decided they were going to order 100 copies of that brochure and distribute them to the townspeople. They've now begun a public education series of talks up there on this subject. They're trying to inform themselves and then make decisions about what policy to establish. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And we'll look forward to seeing those updated brochures.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Still trying to navigate my way through. Rebecca, you're better at the. There we go. Which okay. Next time we'll go over the buttons are clear. All right. So, you guys, Peter and Ruby, have expressed interest to vote on this tonight, and seeing as you guys are in favor of doing that, I'm not opposed, knowing that we can tweak things as we go. So I will look for a motion to approve our 1-year moratorium edits that we've made to the notice of intent form.
I make a motion to approve the edits we made to the moratorium on glyphosate.
I second.
And I approve. So I'll take a roll call. Peter Stanton,
Aye.
Ruby Chang,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. Do we need to close the public hearing, or does that essentially close the public hearing?
If we're all wrapped up and done with it, then I think we need to close it.
Okay. So I will look for a motion to close this public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
And I'm in agreement. Our roll call is Peter Stanton,
Aye.
Ruby Chang,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. The moratorium is passed and this public hearing is closed. Great. Thanks again for everyone who spoke tonight, as well as in our previous meetings. It's very helpful, and we look forward to this year of learning more and adjusting things. And I do second Tom's exhortation that we educate not only ourselves but our town too on this problem of invasives. It's like I said, having that little handbook, it's quite eye-opening how many things you just take for granted in the natural background are actually, I mean, they're problems, and there's people doing good work to restore and promote native habitat. So I'm glad for that, and look forward to seeing what this all brings. With that being said, we will move on to another small item, which is our next agenda point, which is the Berkshire Hills Regional School District letter to the Board of Health. They sent a letter to us requesting a decision from us on implementing a policy on the COVID-19 vaccination for school-aged children. I trust you've all seen that email from him and what he was asking of us. Rebecca, do you want to just sum up anything? Just so we're all in the thinking about it we're all at the same starting point.
Sure. So Peter Dillon, the superintendent for this Berkshire Hills Regional School District, reached out last Monday, November 29th, seeking more or less an agenda item on our next Board of Health meeting for the Board of Health to discuss and potentially vote on requiring the COVID-19 vaccination for school-aged children. So only those school-aged children that are eligible for an FDA-approved COVID vaccine. So if the Board of Health moves to make that requirement, we would essentially be adding, or moves to make that decision, we would essentially be requiring the COVID-19 vaccination to be listed on the required list of vaccinations. So that is kind of a more all-encompassing mandate for school-age children, as opposed to another option that the school committee or school district was pursuing autonomously. They were pursuing another option, which would be to require the COVID-19 vaccination for any student wishing to participate in extracurricular activities like sports or clubs or committees, etc. And I believe that they met last night to vote on that policy. And I didn't get a chance to speak directly with Peter Dillon this morning, but he sent an email saying that the school committee did vote to implement a similar policy, which would just be to, I think, encourage, I might have the wording wrong, but to encourage students who are participating in sports or extracurricular activities to get the vaccine, but it would not prevent if someone didn't have the COVID-19 vaccination, it wouldn't prevent them. So kind of a softer approach than adding it to the list of required vaccinations, which apparently I didn't know this before a month ago. The Board of Health has jurisdiction to do that because ordinarily the required list of vaccinations is set at the state. The State Department of Public Health works with the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to set that vaccination list, but apparently local boards of health have that authority. So that's what we're being asked, or you're being asked to weigh in on and make a decision. No light topic, but.
Just for clarification, and this was passed through an Eileen update. She had a quote that the language read something to the effect that it is the policy of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District that all eligible students should obtain a vaccination against COVID-19. Failure to obtain a vaccination will not result in exclusion from school. So she had that quoted from their policy that they've apparently just adopted.
And
But
that's saying in the letter that was sent by Peter Dillon this morning
Yes. Yeah.
to Rebecca.
Right.
Yeah, I think I might have this wrong, but I actually think I read somewhere, and it's not popping up at the moment, but that yes, I agree that it will not result in exclusion from school, but it did sound like there was another add-on that said, but it would limit their access to sports clubs and other things.
I was under the impression they were gonna.
No, they were going to research further and make more discussions. And they may be looking into pool testing next week.
Right.
Yeah, but I still think that they're limiting access to those after-school things.
I think they're going to talk about it, but they haven't voted on it. They only voted on the first part of the policy.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying that I'm a little disappointed that no one from the school committee came to our meeting tonight. They're asking us to take up what's a really weighty discussion, and passions run deep on this, and as do opinions. And it's a little disappointing. I mean, I think we have a very open and hospitable board, and we welcome, and we love all people to come and talk, and especially those on other committees, particularly when they're asking for our advice. And so I just like to say that for the record, that I'm a little disappointed. They're asking us to consider this subject, and they didn't come and present, or may send any representative to do that. So that I'd like to say that as a
So also I just want to make the distinction that there's two options. There's, what the Board of Health has jurisdiction over and what the school committee has jurisdiction over. They are pursuing solely what they have control over, and that's to make policies in regards to activities in sports. And as far as I know, I don't think they have the authority to make policies that would bar someone or exempt someone or make requirements on
they have the authority
in public school, but as the Board of Health, we can make decisions on the health and safety of our town, and I guess in also the student body. So
as it was explained to me, there are different towns in the Commonwealth who have adopted different policies. The policy they've chosen to go emulate is more, I believe, closer to the Lexington model where they encourage their students to get vaccinated. But they also, the other thing, I believe it was the Amherst School District who voted to require that vaccination. So school boards have done that, as far as my understanding goes. And so they are asking us to consider that option of us adding it to the required list. So I would like to say that, for another board to ask us to consider that type of a thing, I think it's that's what I'm a little disappointed in, that no one would come out if that option was being thrown out there. So that being said, I can speak more at that, but I'd like to hear from you, Peter and Ruby, if you'd like to comment, or I continue with my thoughts on it.
I just want to make a comment that it's to mandate something, you really have to have a good reason for doing that. And it's really hard to determine what those reasons are at this point. As the public Board of Public Health, I think we have to look at the broader picture of not just the kids in school, but what does it mean for the community to have a mandate like that? And the concern I have with a mandate is that it's kind of, it has to have a severe enough reason to put that in place. And are we looking at the numbers of people who have been out? Are we looking at the amount of active cases that are specifically coming from the school that makes us want to do that? And unfortunately, we don't have that data. We don't have the contact tracing to say that, out of 1,000 kids, we've had 30% of them become positive. And from that, through contact tracing, we have had this many family members come down with it. And because of that, we have flooded the hospitals and we've had so many deaths. We have to do a mandate. You really have to have a good sense of what is out there. And for something to just happen and make a mandate that affects so many parents and their children without good evidence, it's very hard for the Board of Health to make that decision. I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to put that upon us without good data.
I agree with you, Ruby.
And I say, having said that, though, we can make a mandate or an advisory, strong advisory to the town of Great Barrington to say, we could do a better job with making sure that we are masking, we are distancing, all the good old things that seem to keep people healthy for the greater good, which is kind of going by the wayside because all we think about is concentrating on vaccines. But we do know that vaccines make illnesses less deadly, but it doesn't prevent illnesses, which means people who are vaccinated can get COVID and people who are not vaccinated can get COVID, except that they are sicker. That we do know, right? But I think that having a strong recommendation, masking indoors, social distancing, all of that should still be in place, I think, in this town, which is just a reminder that we're not over this yet. We're not over this. There are going to be more mutations coming. Some of them are heavy duty, some of them are going to be fast spreaders, and we still have to take those precautions. It's a much bigger picture than just the school. And the Board of Health has to think about that and not just what the school should be doing.
I agree. I would, so I've been thinking about this issue for a long time. I mean, back as far as when they started announcing that they were intending to give it to children as young as 6 months old. And I thought that was a bold statement to make when these vaccines had barely been out and we knew very little of them. I mean, I think it has to be appreciated whether you're supposedly pro-vaccine or supposedly anti-vaccine, terms which I think have gotten thrown around way too much these days. I think it has to be appreciated that these are novel technologies. They're very promising, but they're also very new, and they're doing things, they're affecting our immune systems in ways that we can't appreciate because we don't have the data. They've not even been out a year. And now they've been approved for emergency use for kids. And like you said, you know, we want to look to what data is out there. And from what I see and from what I read, the data would seem to suggest that kids are at the lowest risk of COVID. Normal, healthy kids are at extremely low risk of severe disease. And I think that data is not just from here in this country, but in other countries. Yes, of course, kids can get sick with COVID, vaccinated and unvaccinated, they can. But I think a stratified risk analysis, which has never been done and is never talked about, I think is always a part of the normal protocol when vaccines are being developed or distributed. I mean, some people like Dr. Robert Malone have suggested that, and I agree with him, that this is the greatest experiment in human history, because never have we developed and deployed en masse novel technology like this in the midst of an ongoing pandemic. We've never done that. And the data is still coming in about not only how effective that is, but what are the long-term implications. And Ruby, you said something once at our meeting that struck me, talking about how, you know, that kids were some of the most vulnerable people in our population. And it's true, and it goes both ways. And at the time, I think it was more that, you know, vaccines weren't available, but it's also true that we don't know what the long-term implications are for children. And that's still coming out. I mean, when these were approved, other countries stepped back and said, hey, you know, the data is pretty scarce. We're going to see what happens with the Americans before we start giving them to the kids at lower ages. And I think that's something, you know, what I've always found through this COVID pandemic is that we've never been able to have a real dialogue about what we know and what we don't know. And I know that there was always the intention of, you know, promoting the public health narrative, but I think as time goes on, as information starts coming out, I mean, one of the big things in my mind is the VAERS system that's often talked about, and that people are looking into that system, and there's massive signaling that something's going on there. We hear people push back and say, oh, it's misinformation, it's being misinterpreted. And while that may be, the case is never laid out, but at best, it's a signal that something's going on. And until we truly understand and appreciate what that means, I mean, that system's been in place for decades. It's been used. So many of the normal protocols from the development of these vaccines were thrown out the window. You know, corners were cut, steps were skipped. I mean, we know that from looking into information requests that came about through other countries. And the biggest kicker is in the news today, it was talking about how even the data that the pharmaceutical companies submitted to the FDA, we can't even see that. And they're saying it's going to take decades for us to see that. I think all of this strongly suggests that we need to really stop and wait till we really know what's going on, especially me as a layperson being asked to, like you said, impose some sort of requirement or mandate, I think is just very premature. And I think that the case is not convincing enough that we need to take such drastic action. I think these therapies are available for people. I think people should consult with their physicians. People should look into it themselves, educate themselves. We always talk about education. And they should make choices based on their personal health. And another part of this, like you said, I mean, we do need to continue to say, hey, there are public health measures we can do. whether it's, your masking or your social distancing, but also we never talk about other things as public health officials. What can people do to promote their health? We know with COVID and bad outcomes and mortality, there's serious comorbidities, things that we can do to improve our health, whether it's getting outside, exercising more, being outside. I mean, even the link with vitamin D and seeing to be a strong correlation between low vitamin D and bad outcomes with COVID. That's something that we can do. That's something we should be promoting. That has an effect on health in general. It has an effect on so many other diseases that we're not talking about that. And I'm not at all suggesting that, people should not get vaccinated if they feel that's the choice for them. But I do think that we know so little, and we have a strong narrative coming from the government, which I think is increasingly looking like they're downplaying the risks that are there. And I think as data is emerging, I think those risks, while small, are not insignificant. And I think the risks are coming to be appreciated as bigger and more than is being admitted at this point. I mean, what comes to mind a lot of times, I'm like, geez, look at the opioid crisis. These were drugs that were heavily marketed, they were FDA approved, and it wasn't until years later that we realized, oh my goodness, there's a massive problem here. There's totally unintended consequences to these drugs being on the market. There's things that we didn't appreciate about how addictive they were. And to me, I can't in good faith, even consider any kind of requirement or mandate, let alone, even encouraging to people to get vaccine. I think that's a very personal decision for someone to get that medical procedure. I really think it is. And I'm not coming out, I'm not discouraging anyone, but I think people should educate themselves. They should look into it, and they should work with their physician. And that's my take on this. At this point, I think we need to. I second your notion. We need to know. We need to know more before we start taking stronger measures.
But I think what we can say is to go back and really think about very common sense measures that can still be helpful. Not having kids after their sports to be in the same changing room, talking to each other without their mask on, getting dressed, undressed with steam all over the place. Things that we now kind of want to get back to the normal. And it's not that easy to get back to normal. We can't just say, we're going to just vaccinate the kids and everything's going to go back to normal. We still need to isolate because you can still get COVID. So if children tend to have a lighter case of it, why do we vaccinate them? The reason is really broader than that. I think it has to do with how children are vulnerable. They need someone to care for them. They have a bigger family. They live many times with multi-generation households. And if they were to come down with it from a school setting or whatever, a sports setting, they can certainly spread it to their family, their grandparents, vulnerable family members at a gathering. So should we vaccinate and mandate something of the children, even though they may not be the ones that it's going to benefit it the most? Think about the hepatitis A vaccine. Children who get hepatitis A rarely, if ever, have many major symptoms. Why do we vaccinate them? Because they are cared for by adults. And if they were to come down with it, they would have severe hepatitis A disease. How many times we vaccinate children with the flu vaccine to help them, but to help the elderly, because the elderly can get very sick with it. So there's a much broader picture of public health associated with vaccinations, but there's so much more that we could do to say, hey, it's really not a good idea to have all these kids in the same locker room. If one child comes down with, COVID, maybe we should really kind of, close the school for a little bit until we know that no one else is going to come down with it. I mean, there are measures that can be done. And we're just kind of focused on the vaccine, but we're not focused on everything else that can be done. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
I do. But yes, I appreciate that perspective. I guess I focus more on, what data do we truly have that kids are a large vector of this disease? Are we seeing common huge outbreaks in schools all over the place? And the other thing to balance on it is the adult, to my knowledge, we have big vaccine uptake in our adult population and our vulnerable
Right.
population. We've done that. Yet now here we are confronted with higher and higher. We have some of the highest numbers of COVID that we've had. So by one token, we have high numbers of vaccine uptake, which should be seen as a success, as was the goal. I was under the impression that was the goal. But yet now we're seeing major cases of COVID cases now, and hospitalizations are low, thankfully. So in one sense, it's like, that's why I talked about that risk stratification at every level. We've always done that with vaccines. But for kids, and my thing is, you're asking, I think there's a lot we still don't know about it. And there's a lot of suggestions, and there's a lot of, we hope this does this, we hope this combats it in this way. But even with vaccines in general, I feel like the goalposts have shifted a lot. People were told at the outset, get a vaccine, your life will go back to normal. And then suddenly the narrative started swinging towards, oh no, the vaccines just help you from getting really sick. And and now it's suddenly like, well, now you need to get boosters. And there's so many knock-on implications that my concern is that while I appreciate the notion of why we vaccinate, we also have to appreciate the risks that we're asking people to take. And there are risks, and they aren't insignificant ones. So I think it's a balancing act. And so coming back around to what we're asked to consider, I agree. We do have to continue to maintain certain protocols to mitigate the risk, because no one wants a big outbreak at their school and have to shut their school down. But at the same time, I think we also have to admit that there's many things we don't know. We don't know what the long-term implications are for kids taking this vaccine. And we do know that historically, there are drugs and therapies that get pulled off the market for the risks that start to crop up in certain individuals. So I think it's a multifaceted, multi-tiered thing. So that's why I feel like I agree, and I think that our masking advisory that we have out needs to be reiterated, because while people aren't filling up the hospitals, we don't know that. We know these vaccines wane over time. We don't know what will happen in a few months. And so I think we do need to continue to reiterate the certain public health measures while we're in the midst of this pandemic that we can do. But I guess it's a balancing, it's a complicated issue. And to me, coming back to this issue, I agree with you about the mandates, but I think even for us to say anything definitively, I think is a little bit premature at this point. When it comes to children, when it comes that we know so little, and that even this signal of myocarditis that's starting to become more, starting to be seen more. I was at that informational meeting that was about the vaccines a number of weeks ago by a few physicians at McNamee, and I think one from Lee Family Practice. And one of their comments was, the cases of myocarditis, all the kids recovered from that. And I was like, wow, that's, from listening to cardiologists, they're like, kids who suffer from that, more kids have a greater risk of being hospitalized from myocarditis than they do from catching COVID. And that when you have myocarditis, your heart is affected by that. And a significant percentage of those people have implications for the rest of their life. That's a risk people should know. I'm not saying that, hey, if you feel your medical situation, your particular situation warrants a vaccine, I support your choice to do that. But I think we're doing a disservice to people when we minimize a risk, when we minimize a signal that people are bringing up and physicians and doctors are seeing. And I found it a little concerning that they were so dismissive of that, especially when cardiologists are like, it's no small thing. And there are people in our nation, there are kids who have suffered serious, irrevocable, lifelong damage from that. And while the risk is very small, there's still risk there. So I think we need to be even-handed with that. And just as we need to be even-handed with, reinforcing like, hey, masking is appropriate in certain situations. Not gathering in large crowds is appropriate in certain situations, especially when we're dealing with a respiratory virus in the midst of wintertime when we're all inside. And what else can we do to promote? So those are just some of my thoughts on it. And I don't want to ramble on or take up the airwaves on this. I just feel it's a really important thing. It's a very difficult topic, and it's a very weighty topic, especially as a layperson. And there's so much information out there, and it's so easy to pit one expert against another. But what I see, the picture I see emerging is that the waters are not getting clearer, they're getting muddier. And until we see more clarity, until I see more clarity, I don't want to say anything definitively on this. And I think that, we live in a free country. You have a relationship with your doctor, and that's where you should start. That's my take on it. So in light of this request from the school system, I would like to, my feeling is we should take it under advisement and continue to wait and see and to understand. But that's my feeling about it. But I'm only one of three, and you guys are equal members of the board, and I just feel like I have to say that. Now, I don't have kids, but I can understand that there are parents with serious concerns, and it's a big thing out there. And I really empathize for them. So that's what I'd like to, that's all I have to say.
Is there anything that we should consider in the direction of an advisory?
Our advisory or advisory pertaining to the school system?
Our advisory pertaining to vaccinations or COVID or precautions, or is there anything out of this that we want to do, or are we saying we're stepping back?
I don't think we're stepping back. I think we're really, really being very cautious, but at the same time being guarded as far as what the situation is right now in the Berkshires.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint a very bright picture that, first of all, that things are getting better and vaccination is the key to coming back to a normal existence, back to normal life where people can go unmasked and attend parties and so forth. That's, I think we need to continue with the advisory, whether people are tired of it or not. We have to be strong and be persistent and continue with the advisory of masking, social distancing, not attending group gatherings, and talk to your doctor about vaccinations, because each person has a different situation, a different tolerance, a different understanding, a different risk, and it should be individualized. Is, I think, just mandating something is very, very not respectful of people's personal needs in many sense of the word, even though we are a public health department. I think our job is to educate.
Yes.
Our job is to educate and enforce the understanding that we do have, which is the same thing: masking, especially indoors, social distancing. Those are really important.
are you saying that our current advisory is, could either be updated or is satisfactory at this time?
Rebecca, can you bring it up on the screen and let us look at it?
Sure, I can do that, but I have it as a specific agenda item under community COVID, and we can talk about our advisory, amending it, but I wonder if, Peter, you were trying to steer us in the direction of writing a response to Berkshire Hills School District with this request, or do you want to just talk about our advisory now and just say, Berkshire Hills, this is our advisory,
Right.
take it or leave it? But yes, I'll bring up if you want to skip down
Well, on
that
that,
agenda, I can.
I think we should, on this agenda item, I think we should have some sort of response to the school district. And I think if anything, I think we should encourage people to educate themselves and speak with their physicians to understand whether, this vaccination is, like Ruby said, that there's a risk for everyone's case is different.
So, Michael, I'm just want to be careful because we can just kind of repeat a lot of the same information that we just talked about. And I'm just wondering what we're actually going to do. And I think Rebecca was picking up where I was heading, in that we could update our advisory and say to the school board that we would ask them to refer to that, and that we're not interested in making a mandate at this time. And so, but I think if we're going to say we're not interested in making a mandate at this time, I'm guessing that we need to update our advisory with some more of the ideas that you both were just bringing up this evening.
Okay. Yeah, I do think we should respond to the school district that at this time, we're not going to pursue any kind of recommendation or including the COVID vaccines to their list of required, the school's list of required. I don't think I think we should not do that. That's my.
I mean, I'll just have to make this point, which isn't pushing for a direction, which is what I was hoping we would do. But I do think that the school has very high vaccination rates.
I do.
And I also, I'm not hearing, I hear of occasional cases, but I'm not hearing of some kind of spread in our schools. Is that wrong?
That's my impression too.
There are cases, there are spread. I know of index cases where it has spread to other kids.
Okay.
So, but they're kind of like sporadic. It's not like it's not like one of those events where people just, all of a sudden you have 20% of the people come down with it. We're not hearing that right now. And I really would like to hear what the school has concerns about. I wish they could bring to us, like they would like us to look at it, but they're not giving us information as to why this is something that is important to them right now at this point in time.
Well, I would assume that they think that in addition to what, this is just me wildly guessing, but in addition to whatever precautions they're taking and whatever they're doing to, basically whatever precautions they're taking now, they believe that even higher vaccination rates would help, and that there's probably, let's say that there's a 15, 20, whatever percent of students that still haven't vaccinated, and they're thinking that they can just, that's one of the mechanisms that they need to, to really address this as fully as possible. So I understand why they're asking for this. I think that the general information out in the world is that being vaccinated decreases transmission, decreases severity of illness if it is contracted,
Increase the viral load.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that, you know, there are real pieces of information, and I think in general, I hear you, and I have some of the cautions that you're talking about, Michael, but I think that in general, even compared to other vaccines, this one has been very low in negative side effects. And
I don't think that picture is clear. I would take issue with that comment. I don't mean any disrespect, but
Yeah.
I think that the adverse events from these vaccines are really not being focused on, and are really being looked over and glossed over. And I think to the detriment of a lot of people who have suffered from them. And I'm not saying that I'm not in a position to say how common or how rare they are, but I do think there are increasing signals that they're not so small and so rare as is being asserted by some of the officials at the highest level. I think there are more and more physicians that I hear speak about this, who bring this to the point. And they're, again, these aren't, some of these physicians are not, saying, are not anti-vaxxers. They're being portrayed as that, but they're reputable people, accomplished in their fields, who are saying this signal means something. It's not meaningless, and it's largely being ignored. So that's what I'm seeing when I start to read and to listen to a various and diverse group of scientists, medical professionals, doctors, research.
So I still think that, and I don't know that we need to get into it tonight. I don't even know that we need to open up that document at this time, especially considering the hour. But I do think that there might be some of the things that you've talked about as precautions that we might not have really put in there, and into the advisory as it is now.
Right.
And maybe it's time for a refresh.
Right. I would agree with that.
Okay. I'm happy to look at that again too.
Is it something that we can look at and bring to our next meeting?
The advisory?
Yeah.
I think we should just kind of look at it over and do it sooner than that. With the holiday season coming, there's a lot of festivities. I'm just really worried. I really am about the holiday season. I mean,
so can I propose that we
the rates are going up.
Can we individually read what our advisory currently is, and then have a half-hour meeting in the next, in a week or something?
I think that'd be great.
We could certainly do that. So
I don't know technically if we can share our draft beforehand, or if there's anything we can do to collect the ideas that we might want to edit so that we can be as far along as possible when we actually meet. So just sending ideas to Rebecca.
Yeah, send it out to us. We will make our suggestions, and then we could bring it up for a vote.
At another meeting. Okay. And in terms of our specific agenda item of the school district, I mean, my feeling is we should say we're taking this matter under advisement at the very least. We can say that. And we acknowledge your request, and we're still, and in order to give them a response, I think we should at least do that. Have some sort of official response back to them.
Okay, so
We're weighing the request, and we're taking it under advisement at this point. Something to that effect, at least to be able to wrap up that discussion for tonight.
okay, so two questions. Do you want to authorize me as your agent to send a response based on whatever you vote? The response should be, whether it's that, Michael, or something different. And then also, do we want to put this agenda item on our January meeting if we're continuing to talk about this? Or
Well, I'd like for a way not to have to vote on anything, and certainly we could have next meeting and then just to strongly say, hey, you guys have presented this to us. We would really like someone from your committee or board to come and explain what you're thinking and really what you would like us to say. And like Ruby said, explain your thought process behind this request. I mean, that's what I'm getting from you, Ruby.
Right.
Certainly, I would appreciate seeing that too. And if they want a more formal vote, but is there a way for us not to continue this agenda item essentially?
Well, we wouldn't continue
Is there
it.
any way
but-
we- Yep.
Go ahead,
Is there any
Ruby.
way we could get a transcript of the meeting yesterday?
It was recorded, so
Oh, okay.
we'll be able to find that. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, especially for the interest of time, I don't want to get into a vote because then we would have to get into a whole a
I just
comment.
need to know how to respond. Do you want to respond, Michael, directly? Or if you want me to respond, then I need to know language. That's all I want you to vote on.
Well, they sent an official letter through you to us. So I would just like to see a response that, we received their request and we are continuing something to the effect of, we've got it and we're taking it under advice and we're thinking about it. But do you need to have us vote on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, is that what everybody else wants to say? Or does everybody agree with that? I mean, I guess you don't need to vote if, whatever.
Well, we can certainly
I
vote on
think
it.
we should just say it's under advisement. We are continuing to gather data. And at this point, we're not ready to make any mandates.
And we welcome you to come to the meeting to help us understand what your position is or your thinking or.
All right, well, if we're going to vote on this, we have to open it up, albeit very briefly, for people to weigh in on this issue. We have to do that as a point of order. So we have a few people in attendance. I think we can open this up very briefly, knowing that this is going to be an ongoing topic. If people want to weigh in now, but I would like to see this on our January meeting. And well, when we have more time to hear thoroughly. So just for procedure, we have to do that. And then we can vote on authorizing you to respond in the way we've just described. So that being the case, if there's anyone who wants to speak very briefly on this matter tonight, please raise your hand, but know that we're going to have it on our January meeting. And if you'd like more time to speak, you can speak then at greater length. Not seeing anyone. I'll look for a motion to have Rebecca respond to the school committee in the way that we've just detailed.
I make a motion that a health agent responds the way that we've been discussing.
I second.
I'm in agreement.
We're tired.
Peter,
Yes, I.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote affirmatively as well. All right, Rebecca. Since the community COVID-19, do you want to run through that really quickly?
I do, because I think it's important if we continue on to any discussion tonight about our advisory. So I can be very, very brief, I promise. So in November, we had 56 confirmed positive cases in Great Barrington. So in Berkshire County, Berkshire Health Systems, their testing centers are processing about 600 to 700 tests a day. And the positivity rate jumped from 5% at the beginning of November to 10.7% by the first week in December. Also in November, Berkshire Health System's hospitalizations have tripled. Now they have 20 inpatients for COVID. The silver lining within that being that fewer of these patients were in need of critical care than this time last year. And I guess for perspective, Saturday, November 27th through Monday, December 6th. So last week in November, first week in December, we've had 31 active cases just in Great Barrington alone. And so I just really wanted to say that specifically because I think it illuminates Ruby's point that the picture is not good. It is not really going to get better in terms of the patterns that we're starting to identify with COVID for seasonal patterns. The trajectory last year was that the pandemic spiked between this time now and January 12th. And we're on that track to have a similar pattern. So, numbers aren't really going down in the county or really elsewhere in Massachusetts. And I think it's kind of the time to talk about safety measures and really just implement stronger language or stronger policies and be really firm on that. As the Board of Health, as the health department, it's our responsibility for disease mitigation. And so I just really want to emphasize that because we're in this place now in the season and people are indoors and it's just, don't want to belabor the point, but the picture is not really good. So I just also wanted to update you on an update in terms of contact tracing. So the Department of Public Health has shifted the requirements for public health nurses or health departments when doing contact tracing. So as of now, effective immediately, they were going to, extend it through January, but they decided to move it up until now. Public health nurses are no longer required to contact every single positive person and their close contact. So I can be so bold as to say my opinion. I think that it would be one thing to say, okay, you don't have to call close contacts anymore, but it is kind of alarming that now we don't have to call every single positive person. I understand that that's not sustainable, but anyway, so now the requirement is that public health nurses have to call children who are identified as positive, anyone associated with a potential cluster site, and unvaccinated people. So anyone outside of those direct requirements, public health nurses are no longer doing contact tracing for. So there's a lot of onus on people who are positive doing their own contact tracing and contacting, their friends and family that they were within 6 feet of for greater than 15 minutes within their infection period, which can be as far as 3 days prior symptom onset. So again, it's just a little worrying seeing such rampant disease transmission in our community now that we're rolling back on contact tracing, but there's two sides to this and it's not sustainable for public health nurses, I suppose. But so again, if we work into our advisory, I think we should add in, if you are early detection, at-home tests, getting a PCR test, and really just looking out for early onset of disease or close contacts. So, and then my final update for COVID is under community COVID is that the Public Health Alliance will be standing up a booster clinic on Saturday, December 18th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Berkshire Community College campus in Pittsfield, the field house. That's where they've been having all of their COVID-19 vaccination clinics in Pittsfield. And you can register for this at getvaccinatedberkshires.org. So that's the same website that you've been registering for all of the vaccinations through Berkshire Public Health Alliance, that hasn't changed. We've been hearing in the health department that it's extremely hard to get a booster shot. And I think that remains true. So seize this opportunity to attend this clinic, or try to book yourself into one of the 5 to 11-year-old clinics. They accept appointments for anyone wanting a booster shot at those 5 to 11 clinics that are happening in Berkshire County. And then also, I know that that primary care providers are offering the booster shot too. So check in with your doctor if you're looking for that.
Yeah.
So that's what I have for community COVID. And if you don't have any questions, we can pull up the advisory. You can see what I threw together as potential edits and amendments to this September 15th advisory. And then I'll send it out to you, and you can email me your comments, or however you want to proceed.
Okay, I was just gonna say, under our Board of Health time, are we gonna meet, can we meet as soon as next Thursday to take up this matter of just the advisory? I think we expressed the interest to do that, to meet briefly, just to talk specifically about this and update it. And then and you can send us what you suggest we look at over the week.
I would not recommend meeting next Thursday, just because that really, if we do pass an advisory, that does not leave a business day to get the advisory out through a press release, or I don't think many people will be working on December 24th. So I can get it out through my channels, but
I mean, the 16th, next Thursday.
Oh, sorry, I jumped a week.
Yes.
It's 9:30. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Well, that's what I mean. Can we agree to meet could we meet next Thursday? And take up this matter? That way we'll have time to look at, or it could be sooner. I mean, if it's just a simple Zoom meeting. I mean, I know we have to post the agenda and all that. But could we meet, I mean, today's Thursday, could we meet even on Tuesday, just for 15, 20 minutes to look at this? Or do you think?
Yeah, I'm free, so anytime is fine.
Or we can hash through it right now, but I know it's past the 3-hour mark.
I'm fine on Tuesday or Thursday.
Can we do, is that enough time if we meet Tuesday, Rebecca? To post the agenda and everything?
Yes, for Tuesday, I would have, so Tuesday, December 14th, I will just need to post the agenda by tomorrow at whatever time we decide to have the meeting on Tuesday. Does that make sense?
Do 6:30 on Tuesday?
So it's two full business days.
Yeah, well, how about 6:30 on Tuesday with just this item of our advisory?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, good. Let's plan on doing that then. That way we can look at it with fresh eyes, and we can just we'll have a few days to look over what you recommend, think about it, throw some ideas back to you, and then we can all meet and talk about it in our meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So if there's anyone who wants to speak tonight, albeit at this late hour, we'll entertain some brief comments. Now's your chance. If you have any questions. Not seeing any. Is there any media questions? Not seeing any there either. I think we can call this meeting adjourned, and I'll take a roll call vote on that. Peter?
Hey.
Ruby?
Hey.
And I vote aye as well. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you everyone who came and commented. And thank you, Peter and Ruby. I think this might be a record for tonight, but the time just flew by. I couldn't believe it was 9:30 already. But thank you guys. Your input and help is greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you today.